All right. Well, thank you to everyone who's joining us on Zoom or on Facebook Live and watching. This is our fourth of four Homestead education sessions that we've been traveling around the county, talking to different folks, educating people on the homestead credit and on property taxes in general, and our triennial and the veterans disabled homestead credit, owner occupancy, and a little bit in between. We were talking to a woman here this right before we started that doesn't qualify for homestead, but just answering her questions on property taxes and why she pays what she pays. So there's always different opportunities to educate and to talk to folks. So we're going to have Chris in our office talk a little bit about homestead and owner occupancy. Feel free to chat in questions and type them in if you'd like on Zoom or Facebook Live, and we'll answer them, and then we'll talk a little bit about the owner occupancy real quick, and then just give a brief update on the triennial. So, Chris, if you want to take it away.
Okay, sounds good. The Homestead Exemption Program, is a program that exempts up to $25,000 off the market value of your home. The applications may be found on the auditor's website, as well as you can call the office and we can mail one out to you. To qualify, you must be 65 years or older or totally permanently disabled. Only the applicant needs to qualify.
Yeah, we get that question a lot. Someone, just turned 66, but their spouse is 64, but they can apply. The 66-year-old can apply, but their household income still has to qualify, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Which is another question that we get a lot.
Yep.
It must be your primary residence. The state considers your primary residence as where your driver's license is registered, where you're registered to vote, where you occupy the majority of your time.
Yeah, we get that question a lot too, just because we're more transitory. We'll look up essentially where you file your taxes is a good one too, for where the state would consider your primary residence. And of course, if you're living also in Cuyahoga, you can't be getting homestead in Cuyahoga and homestead in Ashtabula.
Or Florida.
Yep, or another state. Florida's very good at, yes.
Right. Yes, yes they are. Ownership may include the deed being in a life estate, which is when you put it in your children's name and allow yourself a life estate, allowing yourself to live there and pay the taxes. A purchaser under a recorded land contract is also eligible, or a mortgager on their property if there's not both spouses on the deed. If there's an outstanding mortgage and the other spouse was on there, then that's okay. We just need to see proof of that.
Yeah, and sometimes we've had it where an individual has homestead, then they transfer to their kids while they're still living, but there's no life estate, there's no strings, it's just purely a transfer. Well, even though they're still living there, they're no longer the owner on record, and we unfortunately have to remove homestead.
Right.
So there's different things to encourage you to talk to your attorney or a tax professional with, or call our office to ask questions about, if I do this, then what will happen?
Correct. The property may be in an irrevocable or revocable trust occupied by the settler as of the right under the trust. An individual owns the home, places it in a trust, then occupies the home under the terms of the trust. You're eligible. A trustee of the trust is considered an owner as well. You may qualify as a surviving spouse if the deceased spouse was receiving the homestead and their surviving spouse is between ages of 59 and 64.
Okay, so yeah, so there's lots of different things with kind of if you qualify, but then if you pass away. And there's been a push for folks, even if they're in the midst of qualifying, or if they would have qualified but they died, can the surviving spouse get it? And that's not quite there yet in state law. This is a state program. We just follow what dictates are given to us by the state. But so if you had it, pass away, your surviving spouse, if they're in that age range, can still qualify.
Correct. Also, by qualifying, your Ohio adjusted gross income may not exceed $36,100. You can find this figure on line 3 of your Ohio income tax return. It does not include Social Security income. If you have business income, it may be included in your on your state return. I can't remember exactly where it's found.
Yeah, just talking at a golf outing on Saturday, just talking to someone, they were denied because they made too much money, but they said, but David, my Ohio adjusted gross income is below the threshold. And I said, well, do you have business income? And he said, yes. And I said, that's why you were denied.
Yes.
So there's an income threshold there that was started back in 2013 to today. and that is where you have to be below the income threshold. It's means tested. And right now, yes, 36,100, but it increases every year with inflation, the income threshold. So if you're below it, you can qualify. If you're above it, you'd either have to wait until you no longer have that income,
correct,
or until the inflation kind of catches up with where your income is. So we always tell folks it's kind of like a retirement benefit, but if you're still working, you may actually qualify beneath it. Or if you're retired, you may not qualify because some of your income is considered Ohio adjusted gross income, and it's above the threshold. So look at your tax return, ask your tax professional what your Ohio adjusted gross income is, and if it's below that and you're over 65, that's how you can qualify.
Yep, and it's also household income, meaning it's your applicant and your spouse. So it's the combined income. It's not just the applicant's income, it's the household income. Get a little confused on that as well. You can apply any time in the year you turn 65. Due to taxes being paid in arrears, your exemption would start January 1st of the following year.
Yeah, so that's always to remember. If you bought the home, let's say in December of 2021, you own the home on January 1st of 2022, and you qualify for Homestead on January 1st of 2022, you could get Homestead for your status January 1st of 2022, which is payable in 2023. So you could apply now for that 2022 status, but if, let's say, you didn't buy the home until February of 2022, well, the home wasn't in Homestead, so your taxes that you're paying now, even though you live there 11 out of the 12 months, doesn't qualify until January 1st of 2023, when you owned it, lived in it, qualified for Homestead, and you'll receive the credit then in 2024.
Correct.
So the timing is always a little bit confusing, but it's 1 year behind.
Right, and we always go January 1 to January 1, so even if it's a half a year and you pay taxes twice a year, it's still January 1 to January 1.
Yeah. And sometimes that benefits if you see someone that clearly doesn't have Homestead or qualify for Homestead, but their property shows Homestead, they may have purchased it after January 1st and their previous owner had Homestead.
Right, and they would, as long as it was as eligible as of January 1st of that year, it would stay on that year until the year ends. If you're filing as a disabled individual, we would need proof of your disability, such as a Social Security award letter, Bureau of Workmen's Comp showing where you're permanent and total disabled, or Railroad Retirement Board. If you do not have any of those, we do have a disability certificate that can be signed by your physician stating that you're 100% disabled.
So not a lot of folks realize that Homestead's not only for retired people, but also for those who are 100% disabled. Same type of benefit. You still get $25,000 off the value of your property, but different way to qualify.
Correct, and the income threshold still remains on there.
For the traditional disabled.
Correct. So we also have the state also offers an enhanced veterans exemption program that offers an additional $25,000 exemption in the market value, which totals a total of $50,000. In order to qualify for that, you would need to be 100% service-connected disabled or compensated at 100% due to individual unemployability.
We just had a veterans benefit discussion a couple weeks ago with Veteran Services, and even there we had 2 veterans sign up that had no idea that they could qualify for the enhanced veterans benefit. But the big thing there is 100% service-connected disabled.
Correct, or 100% compensated due to individual unemployability. Those 2 are the only way that you would qualify.
That's an extra $25,000, so that's $50,000 off the value of your property. So if your property we value at $100,000, actually for tax purposes then it's $50,000. So it's a big savings. We
would need a copy of your DD-214 as well as the letter of rating from the Veterans Service Commission. Once you're on the Homestead program, you do not need to file every year. We only need to be notified if you no longer meet the requirements due to an income change or move to a new residence. In the case of moving, you would need to fill out an application for the new residence. And keep in mind, that's still January 1 to January 1, so you're likely to lose a year, but you can apply for the new residence.
Right, so once you have it, really the only way to lose it is if you move, you're going to lose it for a little bit, depending on when you moved. And if you were to go above, you no longer qualify. So if you go above the income threshold.
Unless you were prior to 2013, when they did not, the income requirement was gone, if you're grandfathered.
Yeah, those folks are grandfathered in.
Mm-hmm.
But so you don't have to reapply unless you move. You got it. You don't have to reapply every year. You keep getting that benefit, which is on average about $450 is the traditional homestead on average for properties. It varies based on different tax rates in the county.
Right. 25 stays the same. It's the effective tax rate is how it's calculated. That's where it changes a little bit as to where you live.
And one of the changes in the state law in the budget bill was actually to increase the benefit as well every year. So that's going to be tied to inflation. So we say right now it's $25,000 off the value of your home. Next year it'll probably be $26,000 because of inflation. So every year it'll actually increase. You've been actually losing a benefit with Homestead each year because of higher tax rates and higher values. That $25,000 means less. Mm-hmm. So now it'll at least start to increase. So every year you may see an additional $25, $35, $45 in savings, which is not a lot, but it's something.
Correct. Because
the state actually covers this savings. So it's not borne by other taxpayers in their property district. It's not taken from local entities. Homestead's actually reimbursed by the state. And so then they get to dictate what the reimbursement terms are. So in this case, the qualifications and how big the benefit is.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah. And owner occupancy?
The only requirements for that is it needs to be your primary residence. It can't be a rental. It can't be, you own it, but a child lives there. It has to be your primary residence. That's really the only qualification for that.
Yeah, and that saves you on average about $45 a year. It's 2.5% of what it used to be called, but new levies after right around the 2013-2014 mark no longer receive the owner occupancy subsidy from the state. So it's more like 2%, maybe 1.7% savings, but it is something. Mm-hmm. And you can check to see on our property page on our website if you are currently receiving Homestead, and you can also see the qualifications there too, the applications on our website.
Correct. Right.
You can print it, download it. We'll also, like you said, if you call us, we can mail it to you. Yeah. Really easy applications, one page, and we can answer any of the questions. You turn it back in, and then if you were applying for last year, the status of January 1st of 2022, we can get you a check for what you would have had this year at the very beginning, and then you're on it until you're no longer on it. Correct. So really pretty simple, simple thing. So no questions that I saw, but just a quick update on the triennial. So remember, every 3 years, we update all property values by state mandate here in the county. So our last one was in 2020. That was a mass revaluation where we went out and looked at all 80,000 or so parcels in the county to physically inspect, see what changes happen. 3 years after a revaluation is something called a triennial. So we're not going out and looking at properties. We're purely looking at the market, what sales have happened over the last 3 years, and where the market's moved as a county since 2020. So we're in the middle of that process right now, updating values, looking at about 200 different neighborhoods in our county for where the market has changed. We're still working with the state, with our third-party appraisal company, to see where our markets have shifted here in the county. We're going to keep you updated with that process. Once those values are essentially determined, we'll be sending out postcards again, just like we did in 2020, to every single homeowner in the county, letting you know about the new values. An easy way for you to say, hey, this new value is not accurate. Obviously, our market has just ballooned since 2020. It's gotten really hot. It still is actually very strong. So we're going to see some shifts in the real estate market. Now, thankfully, changes in property value don't equal dollar for dollar changes in your taxes. There's things called reduction factors. There's things called limits, essentially, on revenue that local governments can get. So you're not going to see those types of increases that we're seeing with our values, but we are expecting a higher amount of taxes to be assessed because of the shift in the real estate market. So we'll keep you updated with all of that. Always happy to answer questions in that process. We got information on our website too, but feel free to reach out if you ever have questions. Chris will be your go-to for homestead owner occupancy, also levies and things like that. We'll be doing some different sessions this fall before the November election on all the different levies that are out there, what that will impact your tax bill, and what changes we can expect with those. But thank you for watching or for tuning in later. We'll have this up on YouTube and our website for folks that have questions as well. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you.